We've led the nation in net in-migration. We've had more wealth move into Florida in the last 2 years than has ever moved into a single state in American history. And then we have also 2021, a domestic record for tourism to the state of Florida. Foreign tourism in 2021, Florida's share of all international tourism to the United States was almost 45% of all tourism right here. So they would not be coming and visiting if we had those other policies. I mean, who wants to take their money, their family's hard-earned money, and vacation in like San Francisco? You know, you go, like they'll pose mandates. You go to a restaurant, you got to dodge the feces on the sidewalk. There may be homeless, and they let the criminals run wild. You go, and then you want to go to eat, and they say you need to show your shot records. Well, who wants to do that? Nobody does. That's not being a free citizen. So in Florida, people knew they could come here, they would be free, and they could make their own decisions. And we are so much better off for that. So I was up in New York, actually, about a week ago, campaigning for our governor candidate up there, Lee Zeldin, running in a very difficult situation. Tough state politically, but things are so bad that you see why he's got a good shot. And so I go up there, and I just made the point, look, as governor of Florida, these other races around the country, particularly governor's races, even mayor's races in some cases, they affect our state. Because, like, for example, in Georgia, we have a governor's race. You have the governor running. I think he's going to win, but he's running against Stacey Abrams. And, you know, here's the thing. If she were to win, and I don't think she will, but if she were to, it would absolutely cause some people from Georgia to flee to Florida. 100%. You would see an uptick, no question about that. And New York, we've had so many people come from New York because they're being chased out with poor policies and poor governance. Think about this for a minute. We have millions of more people in the state of Florida than New York does now, and yet their budget, state budget, is over twice the size of Florida's state budget. And yet, the people that come down here will tell me, your roads are so much better than ours. Your infrastructure is better. Your services are better. And we know we have better K through 12 performance, and we have the top-rated public university system in the United States. So where is that money going that they're spending? It's not helping the quality of the life. Lord knows they're not keeping the streets safe with that, and yet they're taxing people, driving businesses out. And we've had small businesses move from New York, and they'll bring like 100 employees. And you know what? During COVID, when these restaurants couldn't operate, they would come down to Florida and open up, and they would offer the employees in New York, you guys can come down, I'll have a job. They wouldn't pay for them to come, but they could come. Almost all of these employees at some of these great restaurants came down to Florida and fled as well. So that's what they're doing. They're not getting anything for this money. And then contrast that with us. We have no state income tax, second lowest tax burden in the country, second lowest debt per capita in the country. New York has one of the highest taxes per capita in the country, one of the highest debt per capita in the country. Yeah, you want to know, you wonder why people are doing that. In Florida, even though we have no income tax, we have the biggest budget surplus in the history of the state right now, by far. So, you know, the leadership matters, making good choices matters. Managing matters. I mean, just think about when we had to deal with Hurricane Ian that hit last month down in Southwest Florida. I mean, it worked its way up this area and out the Atlantic Ocean. But we had 42,000 linemen stationed in the state of Florida that came in from other states. And you had massive amount of power outages, millions. And you had the most rapid power restoration in the history of major hurricanes. Millions of people restored within a matter of days. And that is what you call planning and execution. We had urban search and rescue for rescues ready to go as soon as the storm left Southwest Florida. National Guard, Florida Fish and Wildlife, working with the Coast Guard, local. They did thousands of rescue missions immediately after this had happened. That's what you call preparation. And then we had a situation where they knocked out key infrastructure. The storm knocked out key infrastructure. So you had an island community called Pine Island The bridge to the mainland was severed by the storm. Then you had Sanibel Island, had a big causeway, and that was severed in 3 different places. And so the locals were being told who live out there, work out there, this is going to be 6 months to a year before a solution is going to be brought. And so they're thinking, do you take boats? How do you do this? And so they came to me and they said, can you help? These were not state roads or state bridges. We don't control them. But they asked me for help, and I'm like, yeah, I'll help. I don't need the federal government's money. I have money. I'll do it. That's fine. So we worked with the Florida Department of Transportation. We said we wanted to do it, and I said, look, 6 months, if you did that, Pine Island would just die. I mean, like, you can't be 6 months without this. So we said we're gonna work hard, all hands on deck, no bureaucracy, no red tape. We just need restoration. So we took the mission, started executing the mission, and we reopened the bridge in 3 days. Now, if you think that they would have done 3 days in like California or New York or some of these other places, just please stop me on the way out, because I have oceanfront property in Arizona I would like to sell you, and we can do a very good deal on that. Of course not. They would be totally paralyzed by bureaucracy, totally paralyzed by red tape. And, when people are out there and their livelihoods are on the line, you got to be able to get it done. So that's what we were able to do. So big contrast between execution management in some of those states and states here. And then also, one of the reasons people are leaving there, when they come here in particular, they're so petrified of crime. We used to have low crime throughout the whole country. New York City used to be very safe. They've reversed policies, and now you have some of the worst crime that we've seen in quite some time. So people are concerned about that, but it's not a mystery why you have that. What have they done? They've attacked law enforcement. They've slashed police budgets. They've instituted legislation like eliminating cash bail. Someone commits a crime, they get released immediately, and then they commit more crimes before they even get prosecuted from the original crimes. They also have weak sentencing and really put the thumb on the scale in favor of the criminal element. And then you have prosecutors getting elected in different parts of the country, including Manhattan, San Francisco, L.A. They get elected and they don't follow the law. The laws they don't like, they just won't enforce. San Francisco prosecutor that got recalled, he didn't believe you should be prosecuted if you stole less than $1,000 worth of merchandise. Well, guess what happened? The inmates run the asylum. They go in there and they rob everybody blind. You have more criminality. And that's what the New York under Giuliani showed. You take the small stuff seriously. You create a culture of public order. That also reduces the big crimes and the major crimes. So it's totally off the hook. And I can just tell you this, in Florida, you never saw me out there marching against the police. We've supported law enforcement. We didn't defund. We did $1,000 bonuses for all sworn law enforcement and fire 2 years in a row in the state. We have a recruitment program now, particularly for these law enforcement who get treated poorly in places like New York or Seattle. You sign up here, we start you off with a $5,000 recruitment bonus. And people are coming and they want to be here. We will never do things in Florida as long as I'm around, like eliminate cash bail or do other things that are going to prefer the criminal element to law-abiding citizens. And when we had a prosecutor in Tampa who said he was not going to enforce certain laws he didn't like, I removed him from his post. So it matters. The public safety matters. And Florida, we're going to continue to hold the line on that. It's very important for our families and for our communities. One of the things that I think we've seen, I don't know if you guys heard, we did have a visitor last week down in South Florida coming from Washington. I just heard someone said, hey, there's an elderly fellow wandering around your state aimlessly. I was like, it's got to be Joe. He's got to be here. And so he's down there, and people were like, well, he's coming to campaign against you. Are you mad about that? I'm like, I couldn't be happier to see him campaigning again, because it reminds everybody in Florida, about his policies and about these Democrats who voted for him, his policies 100% of the time. That is not leadership to be in lockstep with Biden 100% of the time. And look, Biden's got issues. I mean, we all know that, of course. Watch after this election, the Democrats get blown out. You're going to start to see regime media knife this guy in the back. You know, they've covered for him for 2 years because they wanted him in 2020 and they wanted him to get stuff done. They're going to start going after him. You're going to see, you know, is he mentally fit to be president? Is he too old? You're going to see all those stories. These are all stories that should have been written in 2020, by the way. Nevertheless, you're going to see it. Because he's not supporting, you know, he's an impediment to their agenda at this point because he's so ineffective. Although I will give him this. When he put Kamala Harris on the ticket, I thought, not a good pick. But at the end of the day, you know, it's a little bit of insurance for him to have her, because no matter how bad Biden does, nobody wants Harris. Nobody wants Harris. So he's got a little bit of insurance there. But so they're going to do that for sure. But here's the thing about Biden and Biden administration that I think is so frustrating. There are things that can happen to a country, to a state. Executives got to deal with them. But in this case, if you look at the worst inflation in 40 years, if you look at what we're seeing with energy costs and energy prices, if you look at the open southern border, these are all problems that Biden is creating with his policies. He was told if you print and spend trillions of dollars gratuitously, you're going to spark a significant inflation. And now we have the worst inflation we've seen in 40 years. He came into office and he kneecapped our own domestic energy production. Well, guess what? You're going to pay more for utilities. You're going to pay more for gas. Oil's more expensive. Natural gas has gone up. That's a logical result of this policy. And then opening the southern border, and we now have millions and millions of people pouring across the border illegally from over 100 different countries. So his policies are creating the major problem that we have in this country. The good thing is, I've been fighting him since day one. You guys have not. You all have not been able to do anything directly at this point. But, you know, November 8th, you get to go out to the polls and you can register just how you feel about Joe Biden's policies with your vote. And then think about, okay, so you have this inflation. They said it wouldn't happen. Then they said it was a blip. Then they said it'd be transitory. Then they said it would peak 6 months ago. Now they're just trying to blame somebody else for it. But they passed legislation that they say is going to tackle inflation called the Inflation Reduction Act. But it doesn't do anything about inflation. It's treating you like you're not smart enough to realize that. What it did do is it added 87,000 new IRS agents. And that's not going to be auditing limousine liberals on Martha's Vineyard. Trust me. It's going to be auditing middle-class Americans. And so why would we need to have 87,000 IRS agents? I'd rather see 87,000 new Border Patrol agents than that. And I know we have our congressmen. We have Michael Waltz here, Dan Webster, Corey Mills will be there. Now, they didn't vote for Inflation Reduction Act and these IRS agents, but I think every member of Congress that did vote for that, they should have to be audited every year by the IRS. How would they feel about that? So it was not a good piece of legislation. I think it insults all of our intelligence. But you know, we do have an opportunity now. Say, we don't like the way the House of Representatives is being run. Let's storm the polls. Let's elect better members of Congress and help send these guys back. And we can finally send Nancy Pelosi back to San Francisco. I thought that the voters had retired her in 2010 I thought she was gone, but then she came back. And so we'll take care of business again. But honestly, it shows you why you really need term limits for members of Congress. That would do a lot if we could have that. So you have that going on. And then, you know, with the border. And the thing about that irks me about the border is millions of people coming across, people didn't want to talk about it. Drugs coming across, fentanyl, overdoses, number one cause of death for 18 to 45. It's all coming from the southern border. They don't want to talk about that. They didn't care about that. They don't care about criminal aliens coming across the border. Actually, DHS's own figures, over 90 suspected terrorists coming across the southern border in the last fiscal year. And that's their figures, and that's just what we know. There's probably many more that's come by. So they're doing that. They don't care about that. Don't care about all the problems. The only thing they cared about was when you had 50 show up in Martha's Vineyard. Then they got really upset, didn't like that. Even though they said they were a sanctuary jurisdiction, the border towns in Texas have to deal with thousands of people overrunning very poor towns. Yet you have one group in Martha's Vineyard, very wealthy, said that people could come as refugees to Martha's Vineyard. They declared an emergency. They called out the National Guard, and they kicked them off the island the next day. It shows you that the elites in our country, they want to impose their vision and their policies on the rest of us, but they do not want to live or face the consequences of their own policies themselves. So they're totally content with what's going on in Texas. They're totally content that we had one of the criminal aliens come to Florida and killed one of our sheriff's deputies in Pinellas County. They don't care about that as long as they have their little precious wealthy sanctuary where they can be immune from the consequences of their own ideology. And that is a big problem with our country right now, these elites. One of the things that I'm proudest of in Florida is we've been very, very focused on education. We've been very focused on supporting the rights of parents to be involved in the education and upbringing of their kids. Schools, districts, charter, private, all very important. But the school does not supersede the rights of the parents. And parents have a right to know what's being taught in their kids' school. They have a right to be involved in that curriculum if it's inappropriate and raise objections. And we're proud to stand with parents. And there's some people that think parents should just be cut out of what's going on in the schools. And that is wrong. So we have stood with parents, and we're happy to do that. We've also rejected using schools to impose ideology into classrooms, like CRT. We want to teach the Constitution to kids. We want to teach the Bill of Rights. We want to teach about the founding principles. We want to teach kids what it means to be an American. And that's something that's very, very important. And we are doing that. We also understand that as much as we like our principles, these are not universally shared principles around the world or around human history. In fact, today is the first day that we are recognizing November 7th, thanks to a bill I signed, as a day to reflect upon and for kids to learn in school about the victims of communist regimes throughout history. Today is Victims of Communism Remembrance Day in the state of Florida. And there were 100 million dead at the hands of Marxist-Leninist regimes since the dawn of the 20th century. We need to tell the truth about Marxism-Leninism, and we are doing that in the state of Florida. We also understand, particularly for young kids, and my wife and I, we have a 5, a 4, and a 2-year-old at home. And, first of all, we're very fortunate in Florida to have the best first lady in all 50 states. You know, before Hurricane Ian even hit, she had already established a Florida Disaster Relief Fund, and she has now raised over $54 million for storm victims in Florida. But, you know, our view as parents is, look, you send kids to school, especially the young kids, you send them to school, it should be about reading, writing, add, subtract. You should not have things injected into that curriculum about sexual matters, about transgender. That is not right. You don't tell a 6-year-old kid that they may have been born in the wrong body. You don't tell a 3rd grader that their gender is a choice. We have to make sure that what's going on is appropriate. So we had a debate on this, and the legislature did legislation to make that very, honestly, the fact that we're even having to do this is kind of sad, but it is going on in other parts of the country. Don't let anyone tell you that it's not. That's why you have parents from all political stripes that are engaged like never before. You have the Arab American Muslim parents in Dearborn, Michigan. They're out there protesting what that school district is doing with inappropriate material for their kids' school. So this is a universal concern that crosses any type of religion, race, demographic. Parents want what's best for their kids. They do not want this in their classrooms. So we had the debate. And, you know, the left is honestly, they're smart about this. They know that for them is a losing issue with voters, not just in Florida, but around the country. And so their way to try to stop our Parents' Rights in Education bill was to enlist woke corporations into that fight. And the idea was if you could get the 800-pound gorilla, Walt Disney Corporation, to come out against the bill, apply pressure, well, then maybe it would basically crash and burn. And, you know, it was not a dumb strategy because since the 1960s, anything that Disney has wanted in Florida, they have gotten. They have called the shots with virtually very little dissent for a long time, until now. Those tactics don't work on me. We are not going to cow in the face of corporate pressure, even massive wealthy corporations. We're going to do what's right for you. We're going to do what's right for your kids. We're going to do what's right for the state of Florida. And our policy is very clear. We're not sexualizing the kids. I understand Burbank, California is a lot different than Florida, but we're going to enforce Florida values and Florida principles when it comes to our school children. So we stood strong and we did what was right. And we're proud to have done that. And we do it again. But honestly, the reason why we're having a lot of the things I've mentioned, the crime, the open border, now having gender theory, you know, in this. I mean, like even 5 years ago, if you wanted to have gender ideology in like a school setting, you'd have to go to like a graduate seminar in Berkeley. You would never think to have it in second grade. And so you see what's that, but a lot of this is a function of woke ideology. Just 2021, I was happy to do it, but I had to sign legislation protecting women's sports in the state of Florida. I mean, how is it fair? You compete on the men's swim team for 3 seasons, and then you switch to the women's team, and you win the national championship? How is that fair to these women swimmers who've been training and working hard for their chance to compete for a championship? It's about ideology trumping basic common sense, and so that is wrong. And so in the state of Florida, all of our girls, all of our women athletes, they have a right to participate in athletic competition that's fair and that has integrity. And that matters. And we're going to continue to stand for that. And then, I mean, and this is sad that we're having to even have this discussion, but you've seen in the last many years, more recent years, an increase, significant increase in physicians prescribing to minors puberty blockers and performing sex change operations. And like, here's the thing, a 15-year-old girl would not be allowed to get a tattoo, but somehow you do a double mastectomy. This is not based on evidence or data. This is based on ideology trumping evidence-based medicine. They actually went down this road in some of the European countries. They recognized they were doing big damage to very young kids. When you're like a teenager, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a weird time. The idea that you're going to physically and irreparably, effectively mutilate somebody's body is wrong. And here's the thing. Over 80% of dysphoria amongst kids of those age resolves itself by the time they're 18 anyways. So why are you doing this? And we have adults who went through this when they were minors who are supporting Florida. They said they went through this and it was wrong and they wish they could go back and not do it again. I know some people are making money off this, but we've got to stand up for basic medicine and basic decency. And so our Board of Medicine in the state of Florida has acted. And so any physician that is doing puberty blockers for minors or doing these sex change operations for minors is going to lose his medical license. But it shows you, I want to get back to the time where you can have like normal debates between different sides of the political. There's some people that actually, they just believe in higher taxes than I do. They believe in maybe different approach to like a welfare. That's fine. You debate those things and people can have differences and you can debate other issues. But when we have woke ideology into the mix in all these different institutions, how do you even deal with that? And you've seen woke get in a bunch of different institutions. And in the state of Florida, we've recognized that ideology taking hold and exercising power over us, that would destroy this state and it would destroy this country. So we can't let it happen. So we fight the woke across all the different institutions, in corporate America, in schools, in the halls of the legislature. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob in the state of Florida. So are you excited about being able to win a big victory on Tuesday? Okay. And you're gonna help us get the majority in the U.S. Senate by returning Marco Rubio. You're gonna send Jimmy Patronis back as our CFO. You're gonna send Wilton Simpson to be our agriculture commissioner. And you're gonna support Congressman Waltz and Congressman Webster and your new Congressman Corey Mills. Well, I'm excited. I think that we've come a long way over these 4 years. If you think about the challenges that we faced in Florida, the challenges that citizens of the United States face, and really above all, the challenges to the cause of freedom in general, we stood on the wall. We didn't flinch. We stood up for you, your rights, your jobs, your families, and your kids' education. And I am proud that people look to Florida as a leader on issue after issue. I am proud that we are viewed by so many as a citadel of freedom and in a refuge of sanity in a world gone mad. So we've accomplished more than anybody thought possible. We have fought the good fight. We are nearing, for the first term, the end of the race, but we have always kept the faith. But I'll tell you, we've got so much more to do, and I have only begun to fight. So are you ready to stand with me to keep Florida free? Thank you.